Hello. My wife said she was going to spend 30 days with her ex to help him heal. When my daughter backed her up, I walked away, filed for divorce, and watched everything fall apart for them. My name is Jeffrey. I am 39 and I work as a commercial insurance adjuster. Most of my days are spent inspecting properties, writing reports, and dealing with clients who usually call me after something in their life has already gone wrong. I live in Columbus, Ohio, and my routine is fairly predictable. Work during the day, paperwork at night, weekends mostly at home. My wife Amy is 37 and works as a dental hygienist at a private clinic across town. We have been married for 9 years and together for almost 12. We share a house in a quiet suburban neighborhood, and we have one daughter named Emily who is 15 and currently in high school. From the outside, our life looked pretty stable. The mortgage was manageable, both of us had steady jobs, and we were able to take a small family vacation most summers. I handled most of the financial planning and long-term stuff, while Amy handled the social side of things like family gatherings and school events. Amy has always had a sharp personality. Direct is the polite word people tend to use. Personally, I would describe it as pushy on a good day and straight-up rude on a bad one. Over the years, I got used to brushing off a lot of her comments because they usually came out as sarcasm or criticism about small things like how I organized the garage or how I scheduled work around family plans. What I did not realize at the time was that the real issue sitting quietly in the background was someone from her past. About 4 months ago, Amy mentioned that an old ex-boyfriend had contacted her after going through a messy breakup and what she described as a rough mental health spiral. She framed it like she was just being a decent person by answering a few messages and checking in on him. At the time, I did not think much about it. People reconnect with old acquaintances sometimes, and it did not seem like a big deal. Looking back now, that was the moment the door quietly opened. The actual problem arrived later during a Sunday dinner when Amy casually announced that she planned to spend 30 days living with him so she could help him heal. What made it worse was that my own daughter immediately supported the idea. The way Amy presented the idea was almost casual, like she was announcing a work seminar. We were sitting at the table finishing dinner. Emily was on her phone like most teenagers, and I was halfway through a conversation about a roof inspection I had scheduled the next morning. Amy waited until there was a pause and then just dropped it. She said her ex, a guy named Nicholas, had been struggling badly since his last relationship ended. According to her, he had no one around him, was barely working, and was apparently falling apart emotionally. She said he needed support from someone who actually understood him. Then she said she had already thought about a solution. Her plan was to stay with him for 30 days. Not visiting, not checking in occasionally, living there. I remember staring at her for a few seconds because my brain honestly thought I had misunderstood the sentence. So I asked the obvious question. Why exactly would a married woman need to move in with her ex-boyfriend to help him recover? Amy immediately rolled her eyes like I had just asked something stupid. She said it was not about romance. She said it was about compassion and maturity. According to her, grown adults should be able to help people without turning everything into jealousy drama. That was the first moment the conversation started to shift from strange to openly disrespectful. I told her very calmly that living with an ex for a month was not something married people do. Amy did not argue the logic of that. Instead, she got sarcastic. She started talking about how emotionally insecure men always assume the worst. She said the problem was my ego, not her plan. Then something happened that honestly caught me off guard more than Amy did. Emily looked up from her phone and said she thought her mom was doing something kind. She even said it might help someone who was going through a hard time. So in the span of about 2 minutes, I went from confused to realizing I was apparently the only person in the room who thought this situation was insane. I did not raise my voice during that conversation. I did not slam the table or start yelling. I have worked long enough in insurance to know that when people get emotional, they stop listening completely. So I kept my tone calm and asked Amy a few simple questions. First, I asked where exactly Nicholas lived. She told me he had a small apartment about 40 minutes away on the other side of the city. Then I asked the second question. What exactly would she be doing there for 30 days that could not be done during a normal visit? Amy immediately got defensive. She said he was in a fragile mental state and needed someone around consistently. She started talking about how people going through emotional breakdowns need stability and reassurance. According to her, short visits would not be enough. The entire explanation sounded like something copied from a self-help article. I asked the third question. Did Nicholas ask her to move in with him? Amy hesitated for half a second before answering. Then she said it was more her idea because she understood him better than anyone else. That was the point where the conversation stopped feeling like a discussion and started feeling like a decision she had already made. I told her directly that if she was expecting me to agree with that plan, the answer was no. Amy leaned back in her chair and gave me the same expression she uses when she thinks someone is being slow. She said I was overreacting and turning something compassionate into a control issue. According to her, I should be proud that my wife was the kind of person willing to help someone who was struggling. Emily chimed in again at that point. She said Mom has always helped people and that I was making it sound worse than it was. Hearing that from my own kid was honestly the strangest part of the whole moment. Not because Emily said it, but because Amy clearly expected her to. Then Amy said the sentence that changed the entire situation for me. She said she was not asking for permission. She was informing me what she planned to do. And according to her, any supportive husband would understand that. I looked at Amy for a few seconds after she said that. Not asking for permission. Informing me. That sentence told me everything I needed to know about where I stood in that decision. So I kept my voice calm and said something just as direct. I told her if she left our house to go live with Nicholas for 30 days, our marriage would be over. No drama. No yelling. Just a clear boundary. Amy actually laughed when I said it. Not nervous laughter either. The kind of short, dismissive laugh someone gives when they think the other person is bluffing. She leaned forward and said I was being ridiculous. According to her, threatening divorce over something like this proved her point about me being insecure. Then she started talking about trust. She said if I trusted her, there should not be a problem. She repeated again that this was about helping someone who was struggling and that only small-minded people would assume something inappropriate. I let her finish. Then I repeated the same sentence again. If you go live with Nicholas, I will file for divorce. That was it. No speech. No argument. Just the line. For the first time that evening, Amy looked slightly annoyed instead of confident. Not worried. Just irritated that I was not backing down. Emily spoke up again and said she thought her mom was doing the right thing. She said Nicholas probably just needed someone who actually cared about him. Amy nodded like that comment confirmed something. Then she stood up and walked upstairs. About 20 minutes later, she came back down with a small suitcase. Emily was right behind her with a backpack and a small duffel bag. That part one had not expected. Amy said Emily wanted to stay with her while she helped Nicholas because the apartment was closer to some of Emily's friends and it would only be temporary anyway. Emily avoided looking directly at me while she said she thought it would be fine. Amy grabbed her keys and headed for the door. When she stopped next to me, she shook her head like I was the difficult one in the situation. She said when I finally calmed down, I would realize how childish I had been about the whole thing. Then they both walked out. The house went quiet in a way I had never experienced before. I sat there for about 10 minutes after the door closed. Then I stood up, went to my office, opened my laptop, and started looking up divorce attorneys. The next morning, I called a divorce attorney before I even left for work. One thing about my job is that I deal with unpleasant realities all the time. Fires, floods, collapsed roofs. When something is clearly broken, you do not waste time pretending it might fix itself. You assess the damage and move forward. That was exactly how I approached this. The attorney I spoke with was a woman named Karen who had been practicing family law for over 20 years. I explained the situation in a very straightforward way. My wife had voluntarily left our marital home to live with her ex-boyfriend and had taken our daughter with her. Karen paused for a moment after hearing that. Then she said something that honestly made the situation a lot clearer. She said from a legal standpoint, Amy leaving the home voluntarily could work against her depending on how things unfolded, especially if she established residence somewhere else with another man. That was the first small confirmation that I was not crazy for drawing the line where I did. Karen advised me to document everything carefully. Dates, conversations, texts. She also recommended filing quickly rather than waiting to see if Amy changed her mind. Waiting would only make things more complicated. So that afternoon, I officially started the process. While all of that was happening, Amy sent me exactly 2 messages. The first one came late that morning. It simply said they had arrived safely and that Emily was settling in fine. The second message came a few hours later. She wrote that she hoped I had cooled down and was ready to have a mature conversation soon. There was no apology, no acknowledgement of the ultimatum I gave her, just the assumption that I would eventually come around. I did not respond. Instead, I forwarded both messages to my attorney and continued filling out paperwork. The strangest part was the silence that followed. Amy clearly believed I was bluffing. What she did not realize was that once I reached a conclusion about something like this, I did not revisit the decision. By the end of the week, the divorce paperwork was officially filed. Amy still had no idea. Amy found out about the divorce about 10 days later. Not because I told her, because she got served. I was at work when my phone rang that afternoon. The caller ID showed Amy's name, and I already knew what the conversation was going to be about. I let it ring once before answering. She did not even say hello. The first thing out of her mouth was asking if I had seriously filed for divorce. Her tone was not sad or shocked. It was angry. I told her yes. There was a short pause on the line, and then she started talking fast, the way she does when she thinks she is about to win an argument. She said this was exactly the kind of extreme reaction she expected from me. According to her, I had turned a temporary situation into a legal circus. She kept repeating the word temporary. 30 days. Just 30 days. Like that somehow erased the fact that she moved into another man's apartment after I told her exactly what the consequence would be. I asked her one simple question. Did you move in with Nicholas after I told you that would end our marriage? She immediately started redirecting the conversation. She said I was twisting things. She said she had not moved in permanently and that she was only there to help someone who was struggling. She also added that Emily was doing great and that the apartment situation was completely normal. That part actually irritated me more than the rest, because she was still pretending this entire thing was reasonable. So I told her something she clearly did not expect. I said the divorce filing was already done and my attorney would handle any further communication. For the first time during that call, Amy's tone shifted. She asked if I was seriously willing to destroy our marriage over what she called a misunderstanding. I told her there was no misunderstanding. She made a decision. I responded to it. Then I ended the call. What Amy still did not realize at that point was that things at Nicholas's apartment were already starting to fall apart. About 2 weeks after Amy left, the first crack started to show. It came from an unexpected place. Emily called me. That alone was unusual, because since she left with Amy, we had barely spoken. I had sent her a couple of short messages during the first week just asking if she was okay. She answered with 1 or 2 word replies and nothing else. So when I saw her name on my phone that evening, I answered immediately. Her voice sounded irritated, not upset, just annoyed. She started by saying that living at Nicholas's apartment was not what she expected. Apparently, the place was smaller than Amy had described. A 1-bedroom apartment with a pull-out couch in the living room. Amy had taken the bedroom, while Emily was sleeping on the couch. That alone was already creating tension. But the real issue was Nicholas himself. Emily said he was not exactly the fragile, broken guy Amy had described at the dinner table. According to her, he spent most of his time either playing video games or complaining about things that had nothing to do with Amy. She also mentioned something that caught my attention immediately. Nicholas did not seem particularly grateful that Amy was there. In fact, Emily said he mostly treated it like Amy had simply moved in. Cooking, cleaning, running errands. Basically acting like she had stepped into the role of unpaid support staff. Amy apparently did not like that description when Emily pointed it out. According to Emily, they had already argued about it a few times. The part that surprised me was what Emily said next. She admitted that the situation was starting to feel weird. 3 people in a small apartment. Her mother trying to manage Nicholas's emotions all day. And Nicholas acting like the whole arrangement was completely normal. Emily asked if I thought things would calm down soon. I told her honestly that I did not know. But inside my head I had a very clear thought. Amy had walked into a situation she believed she could control. And from the sound of it, Nicholas had very different expectations. 3 days after that call, Emily called me again. This time she sounded more frustrated than annoyed. She did not even bother with small talk. The first thing she said was that her mom and Nicholas had been arguing almost every day. Apparently, the entire dynamic had changed once the first week passed. When Amy arrived, Nicholas acted like he needed constant emotional support. Long conversations about his ex, complaints about his life, the usual stuff Amy described when she justified moving in. But after a while that stopped. According to Emily, Nicholas started acting less like someone who needed help and more like someone who had just gained a live-in assistant. Amy was cooking most of the meals. She was cleaning the apartment. She was running errands for groceries and other things Nicholas said he needed. Emily said Nicholas barely left the apartment most days and spent hours playing games or scrolling on his phone while Amy handled everything else. That alone was already creating tension. But the real turning point happened when Amy brought up my divorce filing. Emily said Amy told Nicholas that things at home had become complicated and that she might need more time before everything settled. Apparently, Nicholas did not react the way Amy expected. Instead of being grateful or supportive, he got irritated. Emily overheard part of the conversation from the living room. Nicholas asked Amy if she expected him to deal with drama from her marriage while she was staying there. Then he said something that made the whole situation suddenly very clear. He told Amy that helping him for a few weeks was one thing. Blowing up her marriage and bringing that mess into his life was something else. Emily said that was the first time she saw her mom genuinely thrown off balance. The man Amy left our house to help was now annoyed that she had actually done it. And the apartment that was supposed to be a temporary rescue mission was turning into something none of them seemed prepared for. The situation finally exploded about 3 weeks after Amy moved in. I did not hear it directly from her. Emily called me again late one evening. This time she sounded tired. Not irritated. Not frustrated. Just tired. She told me that earlier that day Amy and Nicholas had a serious argument. The kind where both people stopped pretending to be polite. Apparently it started because Amy tried to talk to Nicholas about extending her stay. According to Emily, my wife had begun realizing that coming back home was no longer going to be simple. The divorce papers had been filed, and she was starting to understand that I was not going to reverse that decision. So she tried to shift the situation. Emily said Amy suggested that maybe staying with Nicholas a little longer would help everyone figure things out. Nicholas did not take that well. In fact, he reacted the exact opposite way. He told her that the original idea was 30 days and that he never agreed to anything more than that. He also made it very clear that he had not asked her to destroy her marriage in the process. Emily said Amy tried to remind him that she came there to support him when he was struggling. Nicholas responded with something blunt. He said he thought she would visit sometimes. He never expected her to actually move in and bring a teenager with her. That comment apparently pushed Amy over the edge. Emily said they started arguing loudly about whose idea the whole thing really was. But the part that stuck with Emily the most was what Nicholas said near the end of the argument. He told Amy that if she thought moving into his apartment meant they were getting back together, she completely misunderstood the situation. And suddenly the entire reason she left our house looked very different. The last update I got from Emily came about 4 days after that argument. By then, the 30-day timeline Amy originally announced had almost passed. Emily called me in the afternoon and asked a simple question. She asked if she could come home. There was no hesitation in my answer. I told her of course she could. Whatever had happened over there clearly pushed her past the point of wanting to stay involved in the situation. She explained that things between Amy and Nicholas had gotten worse after the fight. Nicholas had started keeping his distance from Amy around the apartment. According to Emily, he spent most of his time either out with friends or locked in the bedroom, while Amy stayed in the living room trying to hold the situation together. The person Amy went there to rescue had completely checked out of the arrangement. Emily also said Amy had begun realizing the full consequences of what she had done. The divorce papers were real. Our house was no longer something she could simply walk back into. And Nicholas had no interest in turning their strange living arrangement into a relationship. Emily came home that evening with 2 bags and looked exhausted. I did not push her for details. She had already seen enough of the situation collapse on its own. Amy tried calling me later that night. I did not answer. The next day, she sent a message saying we needed to talk and that things had gotten complicated. That was the exact word she used. Complicated. But from my perspective, the situation was actually very simple. She made a choice. I responded to it exactly the way I said I would. The divorce process continued without interruption after that. From what I eventually heard through Emily, Amy did leave Nicholas's apartment shortly after the 30 days were up. The man she believed needed her support had no interest in keeping her there, and the marriage she walked away from was already legally ending. In the end, the entire situation collapsed under the weight of the same decision she dismissed at our dinner table. She assumed I would eventually accept it. I didn't. Bye-bye.